Welcome to this VEX Ultimate Guide. This guide will show you how to burst enemies with one-shot combos, dominate in teamfights using effective strategies to win those tough games, and so much more, including tips and tricks, plenty of combos, and even matchups. This guide includes all the best builds from the top pro and solo queue players. Whatever your goal is this season, whether it's gold, plat, diamond or higher, this guide will help you reach it. All timestamps and details are in the description below. If you're unsure whether VEX is the champ for you, check out the strengths and weaknesses first. I'm Zoose, and let's get straight into this guide. Let's quickly cover VEX's abilities, then I'll show you tips and tricks to give you an advantage in your next game. Her passive, Doom and Gloom, has two parts. Let's cover Doom first. Once the bar under VEX's health bar is full and turned red, her next basic ability is now empowered and will fear all enemies hit, causing them to slow down and flee away. Enemies will also be knocked down, basically interrupting any dashes. It takes between 25 to 16 seconds to charge up again. The second part, Gloom, activates on any nearby targets that dash or blink, including flash. Once enemies are marked, VEX's auto attacks and basic abilities will trigger extra magic damage as well as refund 25% of Doom's cooldown. The marks last 6 seconds. Her Q, Mistral Bolt, sends out two-part skill shots. The first part is a thick AoE that moves quite slow. The second part thins out and speeds up. It's a great long-range skill shot to poke enemies, clear waves, and activate your passive, whether you use the thick part at close range on multiple targets or the thin long range to poke enemies further away. Her W, Personal Space, instantly discharges a shockwave around VEX, damaging enemies within range and shielding VEX for 2.5 seconds. With your Doom passive charged up, you'll be able to fear and slow multiple enemies, and I'll cover all the effective combos later on. Her E, Looming Darkness, creates a shadow at the target location. Once finished casting, it deals magic damage and slows enemies within the radius, as well as apply the Gloom passive. The size of the circle increases in radius and cast time the further it travels. Although it's great to increase the size of E to hit more targets, sometimes it's best to use it close or even on top of yourself for the almost instant cast, especially in those clutch situations. And finally, her ultimate, Shadow Surge, can be cast twice. Firstly, VEX launches a quick long-range shadow that deals damage and stops with a first champion hit. You'll then be able to recast this ability. Once recasted, VEX will dash towards the marked target and deal magic damage on arrival. The next part is what truly makes VEX a terror in teamfights. If the marked target dies within 6 seconds, VEX will be able to use her ultimate again with no mana cost as long as it's within 12 seconds. This really amplifies your chances to snowball skirmishes and teamfights. Ability order. The first ability you want to max is Q. It is your main poke tool in lane with a low cooldown, has great AoE to clear waves, and costs the least mana. The second ability you want to max is W. This will increase the shield strength and reduce the cooldown. Another great AoE to clear minion waves. You want to max E last since it doesn't actually reduce the cooldown every time you level it up. It also costs the most mana when fully maxed. And you'll want to level up your ultimate anytime you can, which is at level 6, 11 and 16. In terms of what to take at level 1, you almost always want to level E in most matchups, as it's a great poke tool which applies Gloom, giving you potential to chunk enemies with the extra damage and even activate the rune Electrocute. You can even use it on the wave for a faster push. It can be used if your team is planning on invading, as you can fear multiple enemies at long range. W is also effective for invades, especially a flash W combo, which I'll cover later. Q can be useful at level 1 if you're up against very long range champions. Electrocute. In terms of major runes, there is currently one preferred amongst solo queue and pro players, and that's Electrocute. This rune procs whenever you land 3 auto attacks or different abilities, and VEX's combos make this very easy to activate. A simple EQ and auto attack in lane deals a nice chunk of damage during a trade, and especially later on when you're looking to one-shot burst enemies. I'll go over effective combos after this build section. As for minor runes, you'll want to take Taste of Blood as the default best rune, however you can take Cheap Shot for some extra damage if you don't need the HP sustain from Taste of Blood. Eyeball Collection is great for the extra AP you gain for each takedown you get, but Ghost Pourer and Zombie Ward might be a necessary choice if you want to prioritize warding and vision. And Ultimate Hunter as the final rune. This rune prioritizes reducing the cooldown of your ultimate, which will have the greatest impact on how you perform on VEX. Ultimate transforms her into a mage with assassin-like qualities, having the potential to dash, fear, and burst multiple enemies. When it comes to the second pages, there's a few options, but one overwhelming first choice, and that's Inspiration with Biscuit Delivery and Time Warp Tonic runes. With a Corrupting Potion start, these two runes increase your chances to win trades, and provide sustain in lane with the added benefit of saving gold from multiple bases, compared to a Doran's Ring and two-pot start. As for the less popular options, you can always opt for Perfect Timing, as a stopwatch allows for some playmaking early on, and you'll most likely build Zhonyas, and even Cosmic Insight for the Summoner Spell and Item Haste, which will only be viable with the Everfrost Mythic item, which I'll cover soon. A final viable option seems to be from the Sorcery page, with Mana Flow Ban for the Mana Sustain, and Transcendence for some great ability haste, especially the increased potential to snowball teamfights from the level 11 Power Spike. Once a champ is taken down, you'll be able to spam your abilities even more in teamfights. Okay, so now let's cover items. There are two viable starting items for VEX. Corrupting Potion is by far the most popular choice, especially if you've taken Inspiration as your second page. The HP and mana sustain plus the extra damage from the burn allows VEX to trade aggressively in lane. Doran's Ring plus 2 health pots. Just to note, you won't want to purchase this as your starting item if you've chosen Biscuit Delivery and Time Warp Tonic as your runes. However, it makes a great first back option even if you've already purchased Corrupting Potion, as it provides AP, HP, and mana to survive most laning phases. Early purchases. Dark Seal, a small AP and HP bonus with the potential to snowball. Lost Chapter. One of your first main goals in lane is to reach at least 1,300 gold in order to purchase the Lost Chapter, as it will take care of all your mana and AP needs early game before you finish your mythic item. There are two main mythic choices you'll want to consider. Everfrost. By far the most popular with VEX mains, it provides all the stats you need to one-shot enemies. Additionally, you'll have Glaciate active to lock down enemies with a snare in the center, or slow within the rest of the cone range. It has great synergy with Vex's Sphere, as you'll have an almost 100% chance to land the snare while enemies are slowed and in their fleeing animation. Even the extra HP will help survive, as Vex generally dives quite deep in teamfights once she's entered with her ultimate. This mythic also costs 400 less gold than Luden's, which is the next mythic I'll cover. Luden's Echo, the second most popular and probably the last viable choice at the moment. This item has more AP and more potential to deal damage from further away with its Echo passive damage. I would rarely advise buying this over Everfrost unless you are snowballing an already big lead and aren't focused on locking down targets. Activating this passive 3 or more times in a teamfight makes it a huge threat to enemies. The movement speed bonus allows for better positioning. Crown of the Shattered Queen. This is the best anti-burst item, which can be useful with Vex's playstyle of dashing into multiple targets. In this current meta and after a few nerfs, this item has fallen out of favor and just doesn't provide the same power spike as the previous two mythics. However, if there are any item changes in the future, it might just come back in favor. Liandry's Anguish. In the rare case you're up against 3 or more tanks, you want to pick up Liandry's for the maximum percentage health damage. Legendary items will become one of the main focuses of your decision making. Let's quickly cover some scenarios and then solutions. Magi Soulstealer, the ultimate snowball item. At 1,600 gold, or 1,250 gold with Dark Seal already purchased, it's the cheapest legendary in the game, with an insane power spike to snowball. You'll need to be extremely confident you won't die, or you'll risk losing half your stacks. Shadowflame. If you're after a power spike with some extra damage from AP and magic penetration at a reasonable price, as well as the added HP to help you survive, this currently is the best item to purchase after your Mythic. It's also great to counter champions or team comps with shields, as you'll gain the max magic penetration. Zhonya's Hourglass. Are you in danger of being bursted, or perhaps you want to make a risky play into multiple enemies? Then you'll want the important active Zhonya's provides with a 2.5 second stasis. You can always opt to purchase the stopwatch early and finish this item later on, especially if you don't exactly need the armor. At 2,600 gold, it's one of the cheapest legendaries you can purchase even as your second item or any other time. Morellonomicon. If you're against heavy healing comps, then you'll need some sort of healing reduction item to counter them. However, you don't exactly need to finish this item right away and can simply choose to buy Oblivion Orb for 800 gold. Rabadon's Deathcap. If you ever find yourself extremely ahead, you'll want to purchase the biggest AP power spike available. It will increase your total AP by 35%, so you'll gain much more gold value from this item if you purchase it as your third or fourth item. Horizon Focus. If you want that AP power spike to focus on burst, then Horizon Focus amplifies all your damage after you've landed your initial R. Consider this the budget version of Deathcap. Banshee's Veil. Are there any skill shot or CC threats stopping you from performing combos? Then you'll want a defensive item like Banshee's, which keeps you safe from the first ability, ignoring any CC and damage. It's more effective against enemy AP champs as it provides MR, so you want to rely on Zhonya's if enemies are mostly AD. Void Staff. So you've reached late game, or perhaps it's still mid game and enemies are stacking a bunch of magic resist. It's now time to purchase your Void Staff. With 45% magic penetration, this will become essential to counter MR and give you the potential to shred tanks. As for elixirs, you want to pick up Sorcery whenever you have full build or you anticipate the final fight of the game. As for boots, there's only one viable choice, and that's Sorcerer's Shoes. The magic pen increases your kill potential early on, and the movement speed will be essential for a mage champ like VEX. Ionian Boots. This will be your extreme budget choice if you just need to desperately buy something. Defensive Boots. In the rare cases that the enemies are all AD or all AP, you can opt for steel plated caps or mercury treads respectively, as will be extremely gold efficient. However, you can still purchase Sorcery Shoes if you see yourself as the main carry and damage dealer of the team. Shards are practically the same every game except for the final shard. Attack speed as the first shard, as it helps activate marked targets and generally activate Electrocute faster. Adaptive shard as the second choice, and then armor and magic resist depending on your laning phase matchup and early enemy jungler threat. Summoner spells. By far the best summoner spell is Flash. The potential to flash W and fear multiple enemies, as well as escape, outplay and combo is too important to ever skip on this. The second summoner spell has a little more variety to choose from. The first main choice is Ignite, for the chance to increase your 1v1 potential early in lane, become a higher threat for enemies in any early skirmishes with your jungler, and just the general ability to burst champs throughout the game with the added benefit of healing reduction. A second and much safer option is Teleport. When you're in harder matchups and you can't see yourself picking up a kill with Ignite, Teleport allows you to get to lane without falling behind on CS. You'll even have the potential to join fights across the map once you activate Unleash Teleport past 14 minutes. Another safe option is Exhaust against any high burst threats, as it minimizes their damage output within a 3-second window, helping you survive most burst champions. If you're simply unsure, I would suggest you either pick Ignite or Teleport before this final Exhaust option. There are some rare cases like Cleanse or Barrier being viable, and I'll mention them in matchups. Now it's time to learn how to deal optimal damage, outplay your opponents, and one-shot squishies. Pre-6 combos. EQ safe poke. You want to land your E to mark the target, then follow up with your Q. If you have your Doom active, wait until they are feared, then use Q, as it will be much easier to land. If Doom isn't up, you can just use Q right after E. Best used when you can't get close to auto attack or enemies are simply far away. Safe trade combo. E, Q, auto attack. Basically the same combo with an auto attack at the end to activate Electrocute for a nice chunk of damage. You can add an auto attack after E, so you'll get 2 auto attacks in this combo in total, but that depends on how you lane and your opponent. Auto attack range trade combo. E, Q, W, auto attack. Another simple combo, but this time you'll be close enough to activate the W damage. This combo will mostly rely on landing the initial E fear, otherwise you most likely want to back off and try again later. The shield at the end will help you take less damage as you retreat. Very close range. W, E, Q, auto attack. This will be important for melee champs that are within your W range. W is by far the most guaranteed way to fear your target, which is why you'll use this to initiate and then follow up with Q, E and auto attack. Ultimate combos. Full ultimate combo from long range. R1, R2, W, E, Q, auto attack. You want to land your R from range, then recast it to dash towards the enemy. Spam W to instantly fear the enemy as you arrive. So basically make sure you have Doom passive up. Quickly follow up with a guaranteed E and Q on the feared target and finish with an auto attack. Ignite if you have to for an even bigger potential to one-shot. This will be one of the main ways to engage in teamfights as well, especially when you can fear multiple enemies nearby with W and even look to land EQ on multiple targets. Sometimes you don't want to throw out your ultimate to initiate because it can be easy to dodge for certain enemies, so we'll engage with other abilities. E engage. E, R1, Q, R2, W auto attack. This is a much safer option, saving you from missing R. You'll have to be within E range and wait until the enemy is feared, then follow up with the rest of your combo. R and Q will be easy to land on the feared enemy. W is used last here and will make better use of your shield to soak any return damage from the enemy. Close range full combo. You can't always guarantee you'll land your R ability from long range, however, if enemies are at close range, perhaps they've dashed or walked within your W range, you can fear them with your Doom passive, allowing you to land a guaranteed EQ and then ultimate. You can then walk away and buy some time before your Q is back up, press R before the 4-second cooldown recast on R times out, and get in another Q and some auto attacks, hopefully finishing them off. Basically, you are buying time while safely walking away before you re-engage and get in an extra Q. If you can finish off enemies without the extra Q, just spam R again. During late game, with enough ability haste, you're able to get another WEQ combo once you re-engage. One last mention with teamfights. Using R on one enemy will usually force their teammates to scatter away from the marked target, so it might be harder to kill multiple enemies with W when you arrive. If you have the chance to land E first on multiple targets stacked, you'll always want to use E first. So for this combo, you want to start with E, follow up with Q, R1, R2, and W. This will be extremely effective in teamfights, especially when enemies are bunched up, which would be best used in areas like the Baron and Dragon pits, as well as general areas of the jungle. Now a note about resetting. After you pick up a kill with your ultimate, you want to be cautious about how you use the next ultimate. If you were to quickly use R again and arrive to the next enemy champion, you might have all your other abilities on cooldown, leaving you extremely vulnerable. Instead, wait until your abilities are off cooldown, then use your ultimate. This also applies to waiting for your Doom passive to be ready, as your fear is extremely important in fights. Remember, you have about 12 seconds after an enemy has died to use your ultimate again, as well as another 4 seconds to recast the ultimate, which is enough time for your other abilities to be off cooldown. These few tips could be the reason between you picking up a single kill or destroying the entire enemy team with a penta. Flash combos. Q plus flash. You want to Q first and then immediately flash. Q is a very long range ability, and we can use flash to close even more distance to enemies further away. This is great to snipe low HP enemies. Best used when they don't have vision of you or they are already CC'd, as this ability is pretty easy to dodge at the max distance. Flash W. You want to flash then W immediately. One of the most effective ways to catch one or more enemies with an instant fear, so either you or your teammates can follow up with more damage. You can even look to use this to reposition after you've recasted R on one enemy and want to get closer to another one or more enemies nearby. Just spam Flash W as soon as you arrive. Flash E. Although there's few scenarios you want to use this, it can become extremely effective in clutch moments. This combo takes advantage of E's travel time. We know that the closer we use E to Vex, the quicker the cast, but the smaller the radius. In clutch moments, perhaps you have W on cooldown, but you have your Doom passive ready. You can almost guarantee a fear by flashing, then E on yourself to almost instantly fear them. E flashing will not work. R flash. You want to press ultimate and immediately flash. There's a few scenarios you'll want to do this. If there is an enemy champion blocking you, use R flash to reposition so you can hit the enemy champion behind them. Maybe you want to almost guarantee your ultimate lands at close range, simply R flash into enemies at close range, or maybe enemies are just outside of range and you need to just increase the maximum range, then use this. Flash cancel ultimate. For whatever reason, if you find yourself wanting to cancel your ultimate while traveling, perhaps a new threat has emerged and you deem it unsafe to engage, just use Flash to cancel it. Sometimes you may want to use Flash to reposition after you have arrived with R. Make sure you completely finish the travel of R in order to activate the damage, otherwise if you flash too early, you will not deal any damage from the second part of your ultimate. So basically it is rarely recommended that you want to flash to cancel your ultimate, but you do want to flash as soon as you arrive. Item combos. Everfrost. E, Q, W, Everfrost auto attack. Here's an example combo you can use to lock down enemies further. You'll fear them with the initial EQW for damage, and just as the fear is about to run out, you can follow up with the Glaciate activate for a total CC of 2 to 3 seconds based on level. You can even use this item to initiate. If you land Glaciate and snare the enemy, follow up with your other skill shots. Look to land the snare on multiple feared enemies, especially after you've dashed in with your recast ultimate. Zhonya's Hourglass. Apart from having the amazing ability to survive burst, you can always use it offensively by engaging into multiple enemies, outputting all your burst and then using the stasis active for safety. This allows time for the rest of your team to follow up. A quick Zhonya combo, use the EQW ignite combo in a clutch situation. Basically unleash all your cooldowns and then use the Zhonya active for safety. Horizon Focus Mention. There's no real combo for this item, just note that it will amplify all your damage, so combos like the full ultimate combo are best to engage from long range, specifically over 700 units, in order to activate the extra 10% damage increase. Unique combos. Hexaflash Fear. For any unique situations, perhaps you've chosen to play support Vex in the bot lane, you can try Hexaflash from one of the brushes or behind the alcove wall, and surprise fear enemies. Just charge the Hexaflash and spam W once it completes charging. Proto Belt Mention. We mentioned you could cancel your ultimate travel with Flash, and the same can be done with the Proto Belt active. You will probably never need this, but for whatever reason, at least you know it exists. Even Gale Force and Prowler Skull can cancel your travel, but let's not even go there. Let's take a deeper look at Vex's kit. This isn't essential to know, but they could provide that small advantage you need to win a trade, a fight, or even a whole game. Knowing all these interactions will really separate you from the casual Vex players and the real Vex mains. Her passive, Doom. Enemies are feared and slowed depending on the distance they are from Vex. The further away, the higher the slow. At max range, which is your max range E or Q, is a 99% slow. Although the Doom bar should suffice as a visual aid, you can always use your 3 basic ability icons to find out if your passive is up. There'll be a shade of a green-blue mix, letting you know Doom is ready. Gloom. Remember to abuse this passive against mobile targets in lane that have multiple dashes and blinks, Yasuo and Yone being great examples. Also, this doesn't count as a projectile, so you can actually auto-attack Yasuo through his wind wall. Remember to activate this on as many targets as possible to charge up your Doom passive faster, since each mark refunds 25% of your Doom's cooldown. Hitting 4 marked targets will instantly replenish your Doom bar to full. You can reduce the cooldown of Doom by 10% on each monster. Remember to use this on multiple minions to quickly charge up your Doom passive bar. Try to anticipate retreating enemies who have flash, so you can follow up with a marked auto attack and hopefully finish off a low HP enemy. Although spell shields block all of VEX's abilities, shielded enemies will still be marked and take damage from Gloom. Enemies that are displaced, for example, your Blitzcrank hooks an enemy, that enemy won't be marked. Her Q. There's not a lot to mention when it comes to Q, except for wave clearing. For faster clears, try to hit minions while they're in a straight path, utilizing the long distance of Q. If minions are already bunched up, you want to get as close to hit as many with the initial thick part of Q. Checking brushes with Q. Although there's no animation to check whether or not you've hit an enemy in Fog of War or a brush, there is a specific sound made that will let you know. Use it to check risky areas. If you hear this sound, enemies are in the brush, or you've hit them in Fog of War. If you've got your Doom passive up, it will make the fear sound. W. This is extremely clutch, but you can buffer W at 0.1 seconds before it comes off cooldown. This means that anytime you're in those clutch moments close to death, make sure you spam W to have the shield instantly it's off cooldown. Unlike other abilities, VEX can move during its cast time, so it won't hinder your escape when you're retreating from chasing enemies. Baiting with W is very effective when you're low HP and enemies think they can either finish you off with auto attacks or ignite. Make sure you have fear ready for even more effective baits, where you can let your teammates finish them off, or perhaps bait an enemy under your tower, where they'll be CC'd and take extra tower shots. E. With her E, enemies feared will flee in the direction away from the center. It's important to anticipate this so you can land your Q or ultimate after. I see a lot of VEX players miss their follow Q on a fear target because they assume enemies will just flee away from VEX. Since we've already covered most of E in abilities and combos, the last tip to mention is with wave clear. Remember to use it at max range in order to get the longest radius range, aiming to hit as many minions as possible. Auto attack the marked minions for a faster clear. Ultimate. This is the only ability that doesn't activate your Doom passive, which in most cases is a good thing, as you'll want to have Doom ready when you arrive close to your marked target. It provides vision along the area it travels through, although you won't want to simply waste a long cooldown for some vision. For extremely important situations, for example, enemies are out of vision but there's a good chance they're doing Baron, make sure to aim it towards the Baron pit. You'll have vision of the Baron, and if it lands on an enemy, you might have a good reason to engage. Although you have displacement immunity while you're traveling, you won't be able to recast R if you're grounded or rooted. Keep this in mind in certain matchups, for example Cassiopeia's Miasma. If you finish off enemies with the initial R, it will count as a death and therefore VEX can cast R again. Once you land the initial R on targets, there is no limit on the distance to recast, which means if you land R on a teleporting champion, you can then recast R and VEX can travel across the map until she arrives at the marked champion's location. No matter how far they are on the map, you can press R again to reach that champion. Just be cautious that the timing has to be very careful, as there's only a 4-second window that you can recast. Although you can't use abilities while traveling, you can use any summoner spell. Drive-by Ignite seems the most useful of the scenarios, or even a Drive-by Smite, although you'll rarely ever take that. Also, you aren't immune to damage while traveling, so death itself will interrupt your traveling. And one more tip, if you've picked up a kill mid-solo, you know where all the enemies are, and your R resets. Since there's no targets nearby, use it to push waves, as it won't cost any mana. Early game. Invading with VEX is strongly recommended, as you have the potential to fear, slow and damage multiple enemies, especially if they're bunched up. E is best to start for the invade, but you might even try going for a flash W if you need a surprise factor. Just make sure your team is near to follow up. In lane, E is best taken at level 1. It is easier to land because of the larger radius, and you can activate extra damage from the Gloom auto attack. You can even push waves faster with E, following up with auto attacks to marked minions. Against very long range champions like Xerath, you can take Q. At level 2, you want both Q and E leveled, so you can start chunking enemies with your EQ auto attack combo. W might be better in some aggressive melee lanes. However, careful with W in lane as it has a long cooldown of 20 seconds. After level 3, you'll start maxing Q. Laning phase can go a number of ways. If your jungler is invading, you'll want to push your lane and be ready to join any skirmishes. VEX excels with plenty of damage, CC, and even some tankiness from her shield. You're still squishy, so keep your distance. If the enemy jungler is pressuring your team, play safe, making sure not to push your wave. VEX lacks escape with only your fear to peel enemies away. As a mage with long distant abilities, you always have the option to farm safely, aiming to pick up 1300 gold for your lost chapter and reaching level 6 as soon as possible. Try to keep your wave close to your tower or at least in the middle if you want to encourage your jungler to gank. VEX has very solid gank setup, landing a long range E or Q, or if you're close enough, flash W to fear enemies and let your jungler follow up. At level 6 your options open up. You can look for a 1v1 in your lane, aim to poke a few times with Q and E until they are about 70% HP, then look for an all-in using the combos mentioned. If your laner is hard to kill or playing too safe, you can always push in your wave, then roam either bot, which has way more potential to snowball kills, or top lane. Even look to invade the jungle and one-shot the enemy jungler. Try to approach some lanes from behind so you avoid walking over any vision. The success of your ganks will rely on landing your ultimate from range. To increase your success, look for your teammates' CC to synergize with, or wait until the enemy has used any of their dash or blinks. Look for and encourage any fights around objectives like Scuttle, Dragon or Herald. VEX excels in teamfights, especially in tight areas of the jungle and river. Mid-game. Item level power spike, making picks, forcing fights and objectives. This is VEX's time to shine. You'll usually have 2 to 3 AP items, which is more than enough to boast most squishies, so be ready to catch out enemies. At this point, you should be looking to make picks with or without your team. A single pick can really open up the game, giving your team the advantage to take objectives. Depending on how fed you are, this is also the time where you have amazing potential to 1v2 or even 1v3, especially if you camp a brush and create an opening to ultimate combo 2 or more enemies. Even if you take out 2 enemies and get killed, it will hopefully allow for the rest of your team to pick up objectives and farm around the map. Fights around the river, jungle or epic monster pits are great for VEX. Not only are champs grouped up, increasing your chance to damage multiple enemies with your ultimate and other abilities, there are plenty of brushes and lack of vision to catch players out. VEX has strong sieging and dive potential, especially with your Doom passive ready, Everfrost and Zhonya's. Look to engage, spam all abilities and then spam Zhonya's when you start taking damage from the enemies in the tower. Side lane farming. Anytime you are struggling or slightly behind, picking up farm in the side lanes is going to be a reliable way to stay relevant with golden levels. However, this will put a target on your head, forcing one or more enemy champs to come and deal with you. You'll have the tools to 1v1 some champs, especially if you land all your skill shots, but if you feel you can't or you're outnumbered, you may have to find a way to escape or stall for your allies to come and help. You'll need to utilize your Fear, Everfrost active snare and Zhonya's to stall. Take advantage of areas like the alcoves, river or jungle whenever you're looking to farm side lanes. Vision control and snowballing your lead. VEX really excels when the enemy lacks vision, as you can surprise them with a long range ultimate, so upgrading your trinket to Oracle Lens and buying control wards will passively create pressure for the enemy team. I would urge you to close out the game as soon as possible when ahead on VEX, as your chances to one-shot most champions will slowly decrease once players finish their defensive items like Banshee's Veil, Edge of Night, Guardian Angels, Zhonya's, just to name a few. This isn't to say VEX has a weak mid to late game, but because of her insane snowball potential, it would almost be considered a waste not to finish out games, especially considering you can literally start one-shotting squishies and reset your ultimate 4 times. Late game. A lot of the mid game still applies to late game with VEX, however, you'll be punished much harder if you ever decide to go all in and mess it up. In saying that, one good ultimate can change an entire teamfight and ultimately win you the game. Keep an eye on enemies who have flash or any important abilities on cooldown, as you'll have a greater chance to wipe them out early in a fight. Try to build accordingly, keeping in mind factors like your team comp, enemy team comp, damage output, and survival item options. Try to remove or wait until the enemy item passives like Banshees or Edge of Night are on cooldown before an engage. Like most mages, you'll have a much harder time one-shotting squishy champions, as they'll constantly be grouped up and finish their survivability items. Again, fights around Barons and Elder Dragons at this point are great since the tight areas force enemies to group together. Remember to finish off items like Void Staff if you're going to have any chance of chunking tanks. However, if that's not a problem, focus on more AP items. Team fighting. This can happen anytime from early to late game, and each team fight, even in the same game, can feel completely different depending on the location you fight, your items, enemy items, how the fight started, and how effective your ultimate was. Regardless of any of these variables, you should have an objective in most fights. Number 1. Burst squishies. An important focus with a burst champ like VEX. Bursting an enemy carry, especially before a fight even starts, can easily win the entire fight. It will help you start snowballing and resetting your ultimate. Cleaning up and sniping targets. In some games, it's just too risky to start the fight, or you risk getting CC'd and bursted. Sometimes it's best to let someone else engage and look for opportunities to snipe a target and clean up fights. This will ensure you get your ultimate reset and snowball the fight. Backlining. Becoming a backline is a playstyle you have to take on, especially when your team needs to rely on you for damage. This means you'll have to play mostly as a standard mage, poking landing fears and consistently dealing damage from your Gloom or passive auto attacks. Engaging. If you don't have any effective engagers on your team, it will be up to you to initiate fights. VEX excels at creating threat once you land your ultimate, causing confusion, especially in solo queue games. Even coming from behind will catch most players off guard, forcing them to panic and give your team the upper hand so they can collapse. Peel. When you have an extremely fed carry, and maybe you've fallen behind and don't have an easy way through the backline, peeling may be best, so figure out which of your carries you want to prioritize to protect. Using your Fear, Everfrost, and general damage should provide enough pressure and peel for your carry to shine. Zoning. There are times the enemy backline is separated from their front line. This doesn't mean you should just jump in solo into the enemy backline, especially if you aren't that strong yet. Instead, just zone their backline, constantly walking back and forth with your ultimate as a threat, so enemies are scared to even get close. This will stop them from outputting damage while your team shreds their front line. AoE damage reminder. Whenever possible, you should look to hit as many enemies with your E and Q combos as possible for the AoE CC and damage potential. Any chance you see 3 or more enemies stacked, ignore everything else, use one of the combos mentioned earlier, fear 3+ enemies and follow up with your AoE damage. If chunking and fearing 3 or more enemies down to half HP doesn't win you the fight, it will at least chunk them enough so they're forced to base, and hopefully not take any important objectives. Let's quickly group matchups into easy, medium and hard. Easy matchups are low threat. You'll generally have easy time poking them and there's potential to kill them at level 6. Medium matchups are determined on how well you play. Landing and dodging skill shots will determine the winner. Hard matchups are champions with high threat. You will struggle to 1v1 them because of their kit. Some of these champs outrange you. Easy matchups. Uri. Her charm makes it hard to go aggressive on her, so only go for combos when it's down. Even if you get hit by the first part of her Q orb, sidestep it to avoid the second true damage part. At level 6, she's very mobile with 3 dashes, so aim skill shots after the dash or while she's feared. Each dash counts as a Gloom passive. Annie. Only respect her when she has 3 or 4 stacks under her health bar to activate her stun and go aggressive when it's down. She can burst you at level 6, so Mercury Treads are a great defensive option to counter her burst and CC. Anivia. Her slow moving Q skill shot is easy to dodge and is her only threat pre-6. You will struggle to kill her while she has her egg passive. Ping egg Nivea or let your jungler know when it's down. At level 6, don't go aggressive on her unless she uses Q and her ultimate. She's likely just going to perma push waves, so it's best to also clear waves and look for roams. Aurelion Sol. His slow moving Q is the only ability you need to watch out for. Either stay outside or close to him to avoid taking his W orb damage. His main threat comes from wave clearing and then following up with roams. Ward when you can and ping teammates when he appears off screen. Galio. Auto attack him whenever he uses E for your Gloom passive. Play a little safe while your fear is down, but you can still poke him. At level 6, he will look to ult teleport, so ward behind walls or deep in lane and ping teammates. You can interrupt his ult at the start with fear. or you can follow him with his ultimate by landing ultimate first and then recasting it when he lands. Lux. This will be a poke battle, just avoid her auto attacks if you're marked. After 6, look to catch her out and all in her. Many Luxes take barrier, so anytime you try to dive her, take her W shield and barrier into account, plus her potential to CC you under tower. She's all skill shots, so early boots will help dodge them. Twisted Fate. Go for hard trades and all-ins when you can. His only real threat comes from his yellow stun card, followed up by a jungle gank. Try to freeze waves just outside your tower to avoid this. At 6, he will look to push waves and teleport ult, so keep your waves pushed, place wards behind river walls and ping teammates when he's 6. You can cancel his ultimate with fear right before he teleports. Look to ult him before he teleports, but you must be quick and then recast your ult to follow him. Yasuo. Every time he uses E-dash, it activates your Gloom passive. You can auto attack through his wind wall while he's marked with Gloom. Keep trades short as he will win extended fights. Try to remove his passive shield before you go for trades. Be extra cautious against junglers with displacement CC, as Yasuo can then ultimate combo onto you. Seekers and Zhonyas are solid defensive options later on. Yone. Bully him the first 2 levels. His Q, dash and E and ultimate all count as Gloom stacks. He will look for trades when his Q dash knockup is ready and his E is up. His E has around 20-second cooldown. At level 6, he will win all-ins with his consistent damage, so aim to Q poke him down then all in. Seekers and Zhonyas are solid defensive options later on. Zilean. Easily block his Q damage bomb with your W shield. His main threat comes when he E slows you and double bomb stuns you, so keep your distance unless you know where the enemy jungler is. Just like most matchups, Zilean is hard to kill at level 6 with his ultimate ready. He can't ultimate himself while he's feared, so look for an opportunity to burst him if you can. Ziggs. Avoid standing next to minions or he will land his Q splash damage. He is all skill shots, so early boots will help dodge them. All in him anytime you can catch him out. His W satchel is a dash, so it counts as a Gloom passive. Zoe. Her E bubble is her main threat, as it will be followed up by a fully charged Q and empowered auto attack, chunking you for more than 50% HP early game. Go aggressive while her E is down, which has around 20-second cooldown. Pay attention and respect her W spell, which is displayed next to her HP bar. One of the few lanes you may want to take cleanse over ignite to escape her E bubble, and seeing as she can use your ignite against you. Medium matchups. Akali. Keep out of her short range Q and she can't follow up with her empowered auto attack. Try not to go for close trades until her shroud is down. It has a 20-second cooldown. The AoE from your E is big enough to cover her shroud, and if you hit her, it will reveal her location, so follow up with Q. Her 2 E dashes and 2 ultimate dashes count as Gloom stacks. Action. Stay back while your Doomfear is on cooldown. If he E rope swings towards you, use W to soak some of the damage. His rope swing counts as a Gloom stack. He will look to roam with his camouflage, which can be revealed if you get within close range. You can cancel his E rope swing and ultimate with your fear. Azir. Respect his Q poke range and stay out of his soldier range. Unless he has used E dash, careful going in as he can counter trade with you. His E dash counts as a Gloom stack. At level 6 he can peel you off with his ultimate. Be cautious if you ult him next to towers as he can sweep you behind. Cassiopeia. Back off early when she lands any Qs as it will be followed up by E spam. Use your W shield to negate some poison damage. At level 6 you can all in her, but be ready to either face away to avoid being stunned. Her miasma poison area locks you down, so you can't recast ultimate. Corki. Poke safely when possible and try to bait his Q. He's extremely vulnerable without his W dash. Watch out whenever he has package, he will likely go for an all-in or use it to roam. He has pretty decent poke at level 6, so watch out for his big rocket, which is every 3rd ultimate shot. Kassadin. His Q MR shield will negate a lot of your poke, so wait until it's down. Get as many auto attacks in early on. At level 6, he will activate Gloom every time he ulties. He can easily dodge your ult with his ultimate blink. Katarina. She's very slippery. If your Doom Fear is down, respect her. Anytime she E-blinks to you, just use W to tank some of her damage. You can cancel her ultimate with your Fear. Cat players roam frequently, so ping teammates and ward up whenever possible, and be ready to follow up. Lissandra. You outrange her with her poke. Her main threat comes from her E-blink, which will be used followed up by her W snare, possibly setting up for her jungler. It's hard to kill at level 6 with her ultimate up, as she is invulnerable and heals. Push waves and roam. Malzahar. This becomes a very stale lane, as he will look to push waves constantly level 4 onwards. Try to finish off his voidlings to reduce his pushing pressure and force him to use more mana. Use your W shield to absorb his E space aids. Remove his passive shield before you all in him. At level 6, be cautious with enemy junglers, as Malzahar can simply flash ult suppress you. Orianna. Early game it will be a poke battle. You both have poke, empowered autos, a slow and a shield. You both have great wave clear, however VEX excels at roams and is a bigger threat in skirmishes with your ultimate and fear respectively. At level 6 you can look for all-ins after some EQ pokes. Rise. Go for quick poke trades. He'll win extended trades. You can interrupt his teleport ult with your Doom Fear. When he ults, you can follow him with your recast ultimate. Syndra. Her main threat comes from her long range E stun. Stay back and focus on poking her until she uses her E. You have potential to kill her after some poke. Your W shield would soak up some of her ultimate damage. Talon. You can absorb damage from his return W with your shield. Just respect his 3-stack passive, which he needs to land both Ws and 1 Q. His main issue comes from his constant E wall jump roaming, so place wards and ping teammates. Each Q dash and ward jump counts as a Gloom stack. Seekers and Zhonyas are solid defensive options later on. Victor. Respect his Q, autos and E laser early on, as it's quite an even trade early game. Keep your distance to stay out of his stun field. At level 6, his burst is a threat, so look to get some Q poke or trade combos before an all-in. You'll need to be almost full HP to survive his return damage. Veigar. Stick to EQ auto attack poke combos if his cage is down and early on before he levels E. Avoid taking his Q damage as he gains AP from every hit. His cage keeps him safe, so don't all in him unless you can one-shot him. His E cage is also his main threat, as it can be followed up by the enemy jungler. Look to all him at level 6, make sure you engage at close to full health, as his ult can finish you off at around 30% HP. Banshee's Veil is a great defensive option later on. Vel'Koz. He is all skill shots, so early boots will help to dodge them. Avoid letting him stack his passive 3 times, or you'll take a chunk of true damage. At level 6, look to catch him out and all in him. Keep track of his flash and ping it to let your jungler know, as he's extremely vulnerable. His main peel tool is his E knockup, so go aggressive when it's down. It has a 16-second cooldown. You can cancel his ultimate with your Doom Fear. He's an easy target to hit while he's channeling his ultimate. Xerath. He is all skill shots, so early boots will help dodge them. Try sidestepping as randomly as possible. Stay behind minions or further back to avoid his E stun, and go aggressive anytime it's down. It has around 13-second cooldown. At level 6, look to catch him out and all in him. Keep track of his flash and ping it to let your jungler know. He becomes an easy target to hit your ultimate while he's channeling his. You can cancel his ultimate with your Doom Fear. Mercury Treads and Banshees are great buys to counter his poke and CC. Hard matchups. Diana. She can outtrade you with her W shield, as it will soak up most of your combo. You'll have to bait her W out if you want to win trades. Her Q poke will chunk you eventually, so avoid being hit as much as possible. If you are hit, stay back, or she'll be able to E-dash twice to you. Stick to poking at safe distance. Diana lacks escape, so try to set up the wave next to your tower and be ready to set up for your jungler. At level 6, she can and will go for a full combo anytime you get hit by her Q or she has a jungler nearby. You almost never want to dash into Diana unless she's close to dying already. Echo. As long as he doesn't land his W stun, you should come out ahead or even in trades. Watch out when he appears off screen and comes from a brush, as he may be charging the W. Avoid his 3-stack passive damage. Try not to ult if he has ult, as he can negate your damage and counter burst you. Best chance you have of killing him is to CC chain him with Fear, maybe your Everfrost, and then burst him before he gets his ultimate off. Fizz. You out-trade him the first 2 levels. Avoid his E pole jump when you can and go aggressive when it's down. It has a 15 to 10 second cooldown. His Q and E count as a Gloom stack. You can cancel his Q damage with your Doom Fear. At level 6, he can dodge your ultimate damage with his E jump, so only go all in when it's down. His roam potential is insane, so ping teammates and ward when possible. Irelia. Play safe to avoid her E stun and you should win most trades. Also look out for her passive once she's reached 5 stacks, as she'll have enhanced auto attacks. Respect her level 6, as anytime she lands her ultimate, she can easily combo you from 100 to 0. Stay away from low HP minions, as she'll use them to Q dash. You can take advantage of her dashes with your Gloom stacks. LeBlanc. Be ready to time your W whenever she's about to W dash onto you, although you should probably stay out of her W range. LeBlancs rely on using their W to push waves, which leaves her vulnerable. Her W dash counts as a Gloom stack. When it comes to LeBlanc's clone, once she reaches 30% HP, your Gloom passive as well as Ignite will reveal the real LeBlanc. Her E chain is threatening, so be ready to sidestep it every time she dashes in. At level 6, you need to play even safer. Best option is to push waves and roam. Lucian. Play extremely safe early on and go for combos if he wastes his E. His lane dominance means any bad trade and you'll fall behind. Play to survive lane and take advantage of your teamfight potential later on. Neeko. Her E route is her only main threat and it will increase the route duration, speed and width if it passes through minions. Therefore, try not to align with any minions and go aggressive when it's down. At level 6, you'll almost never want to engage on her unless you're confident you can one-shot her. Kiana. Bully her early with your EQA poke combo. Her W and E dash count as Gloom stacks. Avoid her Q poke by standing behind minions and go aggressive when you can. As long as you can stay close to full HP, she struggles to ever out-trade you. You can interrupt her dashes with your Fear. Whenever you ultimate dash towards her, be mindful of walls, brushes and the river, as she can use these elements to stun and one-shot combo you. Silas. Keep trades quick as possible, as he will heal damage taken with his W heal, which makes it important not to get too close. Ignite is a must if you have any chance of killing him, and Oblivion Orb later on is great to counter him, especially if he maxes his W first. At level 6, he will use your ultimate against you, which means he has great mobility and burst potential. Good news is, he won't be able to steal your ultimate for another 5 minutes. Vladimir. Always avoid his 3rd charged Q and wait until it times out. Take Ignite if you want any chance to kill him, as it counters his healing and damages him in his W blood pool. Your mana usage is important, since Vlad is a manaless champion, he will always out-sustain you. His pool has around 30-second cooldown early game. At level 6, he can avoid your ultimate damage with his pool, so only ult him while it's down. Oblivion Orb is a solid item to counter his healing, probably best after your Mythic and boots. Zed. Bully him until level 3. When he uses his W Shadow combo, use shields to negate some damage and then go aggressive when you can, as you'll have about 20 seconds before he can use it again. At level 6, you really don't want to ult him until he ults you, as he has the potential to dodge all your damage. If he ults you first, he will always appear behind you, making it easy to land skill shots. Seekers and Zhonyas are solid defensive options later on. So you're interested in learning VEX but aren't sure if she's worth investing time on. Perhaps you want to main her, or you just want another option for your champion pool. Let's first go over strengths, basically reasons you want to play VEX over other champions. Then we'll cover weaknesses you want to consider, and after each weakness, I'll mention solutions to counter these. Strengths. Her burst damage. With your Mythic and Sorc shoes completed, you'll be able to one-shot one or more squishies in the game. Any feared enemies will struggle to survive the follow-up from your abilities and passive damage. Snowball potential. Pushing your lead has never been easier on a mage. With more damage from items, you'll now increase your chance to reset your ultimate and hopefully snowballing your team to victory. Great poke and AoE. With Q, E and R, you can poke and pick your targets from safe range, chunking enemies until you're ready to dash in. Solid laning phase. Whether you want to play safe with wave clear and poke, or look to 1v1 your laner and pick up kills with roams, VEX has enough options to help you get ahead in most games. Game changing ultimate. VEX transforms from a mage into a mobile AP assassin with one game changing ultimate. Land your fear and abilities on multiple enemies in teamfights, and you can always come back from a losing game. Weaknesses. Skillshot and ultimate reliant. Unfortunately, her Q and ultimate are easy to dodge from a safe range, as well as her E against mobile champions. Fortunately, she has a few tools to help her. Her fear is key to succeeding. Aim to fear enemies, especially mobile champions, before you look to land Q and especially your ultimate. Combos like Flash W give you a guaranteed way to land all your skill shots, and items like Everfrost lock down enemies. Take advantage of champions with mobilities by activating your Gloom damage. Vulnerable positioning. Simply landing your ultimate doesn't automatically mean you'll win a fight. You'll now have to plan your next move. Make sure you have Doom Fear ready. Have you got Flash as a backup? Is Everfrost and Zhonya's active ready? Which enemies have Flash on cooldown? If you aren't thinking of these basic questions before you fly in, you'll be extremely vulnerable. No reliable escapes. Vulnerability, as just mentioned, focusing on the fact VEX has no escapes. Technically, you can always R onto another less threatening champion, so that's the only real escape. Otherwise, you'll need to use tools like your CC from Fear and Everfrost, Zhonya's and Shield, to peel and buy time. Falls behind. If you're unable to one-shot a squishy like Nami during mid-game, you've probably fallen behind, whether it's through levels or items. This means your potential to carry as a champion is low. You can still look to snipe low HP targets, but if you have a fed carry on your team, you can always provide decent peel to help them shine. Requires ultimate discipline. Just because you've landed your ultimate doesn't mean you have to follow up. Sometimes you need to resist the urge to fly in, or you risk getting CC'd and burst to death. Taking risks and pushing your limits is necessary early on while you're playing VEX, and you'll pick up important experience along the way. However, there'll be times you just won't have enough vision, or you tag a tank with your ultimate instead of a squishy champion, or perhaps your cooldowns won't be ready in time. This is when you simply have to let go and put it on cooldown. This is especially important if you have a big bounty, there's a big objective coming up, or you need to stay alive in the late game. Fortunately though, VEX is one of the most fast-paced mages, and you'll have a lot of fun testing those limits. Other roles. VEX is by far played best in the mid lane. However, there is room for her in the bot lane and even top. Most of this guide's information can be applied to other lanes, but let's quickly cover some tips. Bot lane carry. If you really want to play VEX and your team needs some AP and you're in the bot lane, VEX can become a solid pick as the bot lane carry. This means you'll be picking up CS and you'll play next to a support. I won't be going over matchups and synergy, but if there's enough demand, I might just add this information in the next updated guide. Look for your support to land any CC and follow up with your combo for the most effective trades. Make use of Gloom passive on mobile champs. Support. As a support, you'll have two playstyles as options. Heavy trades, usually against even or weaker enemy bot laners where you'll be able to get close to use auto attacks to proc your Gloom stacks, and long range or threatening lanes where you'll need to stay back and poke. For heavy lane trades, Electrocute works fine with a small change to your second page, which will take Sorcery now. For long range poke or high threat lanes, you want to stick with a poke rune page like Arcane Comment. Since you're rarely getting close for auto attacks, the extra damage from Comment adds a little more pressure. During teamfights and after laning phase, you want to look to ult in and hit as many enemies with your fear. Peeling for your carries is another option. You won't have the same damage as mid or carry VEX, so CEC is your main role, unless of course you get fed. Top lane. I've seen some very few players pick VEX top lane, however, there's just too many downsides. Your team may lack a tank, as the majority of tanky champs are played top. However, your jungler and support might have this covered. You can always decide to build tank items after your mythic, like a Frozen Heart, against a heavy AD team. You'll also be severely punished and have a small margin of error in specific matchups. With no escapes, VEX is a sitting duck, and any time the enemy top laner is able to freeze, you'll struggle to stay in the game, falling behind in gold and worst of all levels. You'll have much less options compared to mid lane where you can roam bot. Dragon fights won't be an option unless you use TP. This guide has everything you need to reach your ranked goals, whether it's gold, diamond, or even higher. Don't be afraid to test your limits with VEX, especially when using her ultimate. Let me know if I've missed anything in the comments below, or if there's any feedback to help improve these guides. I'll be back to making at least one guide per week, aiming for 2. For making it this far into the video, here's a sneak peek of the next guide. It's either Talia mid, Zoe, or even Swain mid. Let me know any other champion suggestions. I'll see you guys in the next video.